What's your worst oh crap, I just did said that in front of a kid moment? Every few years I host the family Easter celebration at my house, which means I'm in charge of setting up entertainment. The family used to have good old-fashioned Easter egg hunts, but since everyone is grown up, the entertainment has grown up with it. So, a few years ago, I staged a murder mystery. I brought in a stuffed animal bunny on a steel tray, slathered with ketchup, and declared that the Easter bunny had been murdered, and we needed to find the culprit. The game involved reading interviews with a dozen stuffed animals to find out who had means, motive, and opportunity. Anyway, fast forward almost a year later, my wife and parents are in a restaurant eating dinner. We're discussing the year's holiday plans, and we're trying to remember whose turn it was to host Easter that year. My wife looks to me and says, "No, we hosted last year. Remember, you murdered the Easter bunny, right?" As she says this, I see a kid about 6 years old standing a few feet away, his mouth gaping open, staring at me like I'm the world's biggest monster. Oops. This is brilliant for so many reasons. I wish I had more upvotes to give. I was working at a summer camp about a year ago and one of my co-workers said, "Man, I had a great night last night. I fricked 2B within a span of 2 hours." Little did he know a camper around the age of 7 was right behind him and started running around yelling "I fricked a B" at the top of his lungs. Fortunately we got the situation under control though. You bought every box with $20? What Girl Scout only has 4 boxes with her? Just the boxes in her hands. I figured one frick was worth that much. I worked at a Chuck E. Cheese's for a number of years during high school. In that time I was promoted to game room manager, which essentially meant I was the master at turning games off and back on again. However, every once in a while I was given a task that was a bit more challenging. One morning when I arrived to open the store, there was a note that the helmet inside of Chucky's head had fallen off and they needed me to reattach it back to the inside of his head. For those of you who don't know, these heads cost over $700, so I had to be careful not to break it. I locked myself in the back room to fix the head and completely lost track of time. I finally fixed the head and needed to walk from the back room to the closet where we store the costume. It took me about 30 seconds to realize I was carrying Chucky's head through a room filled with horrified and screaming children. Taco Taco. The is one of the best ones in the thread, just because I can imagine the kid's face with mouth wide open just staring at you. Ha. I have a 2-year-old, so this is common occurrence. I love my dog, but I've called her a bee half jokingly before. One day our dog was barking in the backyard and so I went back there to tell her to be quiet. I walk back in and my son is standing there and sighs and goes, "Ugh, she's such a bee." But she is a bee. I used to be a camp counselor at a Jesus camp. I was walking a kid from the nurse back to the rest of the campers, and he dropped what he was carrying and said, "Oh crap." It was quite adorable, but as a counselor I felt I had to let him know it wasn't okay. So I calmly said, "Hey, I know you didn't mean to swear, but we shouldn't be swearing here." The poor kid looked like he was about to cry, so I was telling him it's okay to make mistakes. As I was talking to him I walked right into a door and said, "Jesus freaking Christ." He just looked at me and said, "I won't tell if you won't." I shook his hand. Deal. I told a car full of kids that Santa Claus wasn't real right in front of their mom, on purpose. I was at a Mexican restaurant eating lunch on the patio. Car pulls up to light out front and there's 3 kids hanging out the windows, yelling crap and jumping around in the back seat. We ignore them for a while but they start yelling insults at us. Kid insults like "you suck" and "hey buttface." Still ignore them. Sticks and stones. Mind you, this entire time the mother is completely ignoring them, talking on the phone with someone and generally looking like she didn't give a frick. It was a long light, so this goes on for about 15 seconds before one of the kids jumps out, runs up to us sitting on this patio, slaps me on the arm, points his finger in my face and says, "You suck." Meanwhile the mother doesn't even turn around. I am completely floored by the fact that this is happening and the mom is completely oblivious. But the kid just runs and hops back in the car right as the light turns. So without anything else to do I go, "Well, I'm on their asses." Stand up and shout, "Santa Claus isn't real. It's just your parents." All 3 kids stopped and stared. Their faces went white. I knew it ruined it for them and I felt kinda bad for a second, but they were all around that age when you find out anyway. I think the mom was still oblivious because she drove off without even turning around. Not only is this freaking hilarious, but it's also the most appropriate way that you could get back at those little shoots without swearing, beating the crap out of them, etc. It's like dropping a nuclear bomb filled with teddy bears. You got the right effect with the lightest touch. Walking into my living room, lights are out, husband is on the sofa watching TV, me, want to go have anal sex, husband, waving hands, new, teenage son, sitting on the lover seat, oh my god. Not in front of a kid, but a good oh crap did I just say that moment. I was playing pool with my girlfriend's blonde hair, blue-eyed, German, ex-Navy, biker dad Hans when he called me a P for not attempting a bank shot. First words out of my mouth were "you are what you eat," then it hit me what I had said. He looked at me, and I swear I saw death in his eyes before he said, "Hey, that's my daughter you are talking about." Then we went back to drinking and playing pool awkwardly. Scary butt moment. I guess that makes me in butthole, too. I was working in a retail shop when on Queen St. in Toronto on the day of the Much Music Video Awards, so the streets were packed with 12-16-year-old kids. The shop I worked in was totally crowded with these kids at the time and we were busting butt to make sure everything was going okay and our store wasn't being destroyed. I had been showing a group of girls some bubble bath when I happened to glance out the window and see a girl carrying a giant, like actually huge, cardboard cutout of Justin Bieber across the street. It totally caught me off guard and before I could catch myself I yelled, "What the frick is that thing?" Needless to say, there were some shocked and offended preteen girls, and my manager was not too pleased. I was about to point out that 12-16-year-olds have heard much worse, then I realized Canada. My buddy and I were at Lollapalooza and just found a spot in the field to spark a bowl. My friend is about to light it up when I see a 5-year-old walking by with his dad. I said, yo, wait a sec to my friend, but he doesn't hear me, so I give him a short kick and he hides the weed. The father notices what I did and gives me a nod and says thanks as they pass. It was a nice moment. That kid just got his 1-year chip. Every day is a battle. I taught in a middle school and had a coffee maker with a digital clock on it on my desk. Sadly, most of my kids had trouble reading the analog clock on the wall, so some would try to steal a peep at the clock on the coffee maker. One day, near the end of class, this one girl grabbed my coffee maker to turn it towards her desk. What I meant to say to her was, "Hey, hands off my clock." In my haste, I accidentally left out the L in clock. One kid burst out into laughter. The others luckily had no clue. I still feel bad about that. So, my school had decided to put on The Wizard of Oz. I auditioned and ended up being chosen for the role of the Scarecrow after having practiced for 2 months and making sure everything was perfect. It was our time to shine. My scene started with Dorothy coming in. Everything was fine until I started my song. Halfway through my mind goes blank. I cannot think of any of the words to sing. Awkward long pause. Then, clearly audible on the DVD of the show. Freaking crap. Needless to say, I will never live it down. If you only had a brain. I said I was going to throat frick someone with a chainsaw in front of an elderly couple and their 5 years old granddaughter. You leave the door open for 3 minutes and who else walks in but 4chan? I screamed at a Wendy's because I saw an albino child. Needless to say that I was high. To be fair, they can be surprising. I'm English, so I say see a lot. Apparently you Americans are really pissy about that crap. I use tea. People don't know how to react when I say it. Nobody uses tea here. Road raging in front of my 2-year-old. I called some lady a whole bunch of no words and was caught by a lady sitting in her car, who needless to say, was staring at me with her mouth gaping open. I check the backseat now when I decide to go off. Upvoted for no words. Made me smile. P. At Passover, me and my mother were discussing the tooth fairy and we were talking about when I realized that it wasn't real. Then I turned and saw my 4-year-old niece was in the same room looking at us sadly. I did the Samethjn with Santa while working in a children's clothing store. I just started working there and wasn't thinking. I was terrified the little girl was going to tell her parents. I was staying with a co-worker while working in the area and his son was showing off some squirt guns he was making and I have the brilliant idea to tell him how to take that squirt gun up 20 levels. I pull out my phone and look up the Diet Coke and Mentos video on YouTube. I saw the light go on in his eye just about the same time my brain was telling me this is not something you should show a 7-year-old. Yeah, I've never been invited back since. I walked into the New Orleans airport at the tail end of my first Mardi Gras and immediately puked into the first trash can I saw. It was about 8 AM and I did it in front of a woman and her 2 sons, who looked to be about 4-6 years old. She looked horrified. I smiled and wished them a happy Mardi Gras. A family friend came over for dinner and I started playing Gears with their 9-year-old boy. Figured I'd go easy on him. Little did I know this kid was a Gears of War prodigy. I ended up losing pretty badly. The kid gloated. I told him I'd beat his butt and hang him over the roof by his tiny dong. He cried. So I gave him a 1-month gold subscription card to keep him from telling his parents. Yes, I know, I'm a monster. So, when I was about 12 and my little bro was 8, he had a bad habit of procrastinating whatever it was he was supposed to do by proclaiming just a sec. He used to say this a few times a day. One day, we were at an arcade, and it was time to go. He was fiddling with a game. He had no more coins, and I told him let's go, and shot back just a sec. I proclaimed no more sex. Go on and say that out loud. It took a moment to realize what I'd said. Thankfully, no one else seemed to ha, and we skedaddled shortly. Same thing happened to me in the car with my sister. Our parents were up front arguing about something and she's famous for one sec, and I wanted my Game Boy back, so I yelled, no more sex. My parents stopped arguing immediately and were extremely interested in what we were talking about. At a hockey game, I saw a player go down after a hit on what I felt was a dive and not get up. I was a bit drunk, with a bunch of friends, and in a rowdy section of the crowd, I yelled, come on you P, get up. I've hit my mother harder than that. 1 row down and 3 to my right a young boy of about 8 turned to stare at me. His mother did the same. She was not amused. If you're afraid of swearing at a hockey game, don't go to live games, sports bars, or anywhere where there's going to be any other people. That includes mothers, uncles, and anyone over 12. Growing up at my house watching hockey games, we scared off 6 neighbors, including a college student. P. I'm doing all I can to make sure that my new baby cousin's first word is ass. My aunt says she will kill me if it works, but I doubt she'd get the chance. I'd die laughing. I once accidentally told a kid he was adopted. Once told a kid that dogs don't go to heaven. Once told a kid to shut the frick up, jazz is way better than rap. That one I stand by. Once told a kid about how their parents had to have sex in order to have her, and then told that same kid exactly where babies come from. Yeah, I don't have a filter between me mouth and me brain. I picture this all taking place in the span of 10 minutes talking to the same kid. Just to mess with someone, I once turned to my little brother and told him he was adopted. He played along magnificently, acting like this very obvious news was new to him. He's black. I'm white. The person we were faking out was unaffected by our masterful act, but we completely fooled the cashier ringing us up and had to assure her that yes, he already knew he was adopted. I was on my family's yacht for a birthday party and was attempting to perform a magic illusion for some children when my brother Michael referred to my illusions as tricks. I corrected him and told him that a trick is something a W does for money. There were young children who heard this. I collected myself and said, "Oh, see, I made a huge mistake." Those kids learned a valuable vocabulary lesson that day. One drunk night in college I ended up very loudly discussing the many places both on and off campus where I had rubbed one out. It was a substantial list. After about a half hour, a very angry man came out of his apartment next door and started shouting at us. "You are right underneath my son's bedroom window." We look and see the window in question. Lights on. Angry mom glaring at us as she is trying to rock the kid back to sleep. Whoops. I find that I generally have no idea just how much I swear in my regular speech. So, I say frick, crap, mother, sucker, see, butthole in front of any kids, anytime. Sigh. George Carlin would be proud. The cleaner at work brought her kid in cause she couldn't get a babysitter. He was about 7. He sat in the staff room with a book of word searches. I go for a break, and he asks me to help him. A girl I work with walks in, asks what I'm doing, and without thinking I answered, "I doing a freaking word search. What does it look like I'm doing?" My defense was that he was in my workplace. It's not like I was running around a school doing freaking word searches. I screamed at a small child in a very public setting to go freaking die in a fire. I felt like but in all honesty he deserved it. Got a request from a girlfriend of mine to play draw something, so after a few rounds I get the word ballers. Of course, me being the smart butt that I am, I decide to draw dong and balls and then add the pluses to the end. So I proceed to draw the raunchiest, saddest, most STD riddled, hairy and veiny set of dong and balls I could manage and send that travesty of genitalia artwork off for her review. The next day I receive a rather snippy phone call from her to inform me that it was actually her 8-year-old daughter that was playing with me. Needless to say, she was less than impressed with my artwork and I now have one less draw something friend on my list. Totally not your fault. I am an elementary school teacher. I teach in a portable and was walking my class into the school for lunch one day when some of my students spotted a stray cat. This was a mean looking kitty. One of my students asked me if he could pet it and I said, "Don't go near it. That thing will tear you a new one." The student responded, "A new what?" I have a bad habit of talking to the news, and by talking I mean shouting. I don't do it when my son is about, but he must have overheard me once because whilst watching the BBC News the other day, David Cameron, PM, and George Osborne C. appeared on screen to defend whatever dong up they had made that week, and I was just watching not saying anything, and my 7-year-old son comes up and says, "Look dad, that's those twats, isn't it?" I couldn't react for a second, just kind of stared with a blank look on my face before quickly explaining that one. That's a very bad word and you must never say it, especially at school, and two, yes they are, but it's still a bad word. So far he hasn't repeated it and I wait till he's with his mother or at school before I curse at our inept politicians. Not me, but my best friend. We live in Orlando and have annual passes to Walt Disney World. One evening, we decided we wanted to spend a few hours at the Magic Kingdom. We also decided we wanted to get crap-faced, which is a problem, since they don't sell alcohol in that park. So, we did what any self-respecting, Disney-loving adult would do. We each purchased one of those huge Monster Energy drinks with the screw-on lids, dumped out half, and filled them up with vodka. So, we get to the park, down our drinks in about an hour, and quickly reach our end goal of being S-faced. It was a fantastic night. The only thing was, despite my drunkenness, I was very aware of the fact that we were completely surrounded by children the whole evening. My lovely best friend was less aware. The entire night she was dropping obscenities left and right, but one instance took the cake. We were passing by a meet and greet for Winnie the Pooh. My roommate looks over at the roly-poly bear, size, and practically shouts, "My god, Pooh is such a freaking C." I smacked her, and quickly reminded her that there were like 40 kids within hearing range. She laughed, flipped me the bird, and shouted, "Hey, they've got to freaking learn sometime. Welcome to the real world, kids." I shouted out a quick "I'm so sorry" that wasn't directed at anyone in particular, grabbed her arm, and dragged her butt as far away from that spot as humanly possible. She embarrassed me so many times at night, but it was still one of the best evenings I've ever spent at Disney. Haha. On my senior choir trip, a group of us went around Disney World chanting "Horse dong, clap clap, mother sucker, clap clap, horse dong mother sucker, clap 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 clap." Ah, memories. My daughter is rapidly approaching 2 and repeats all words she can. While in traffic I said "dang, dang." She repeats, "Oh crap, crap," she says. So be careful what you say. They repeat things. Sometimes funny things. Sometimes, "Oh crap, I shouldn't have said that," things. I imagined her repeating, "Oh crap, I shouldn't have said that." Happened to someone I was talking with. I can't remember what the conversation was about, but at one point he was telling a story that included him saying, "Would you like to ride the pony?" complete with his thrusting and pretending to slap a girl's butt as she rides him. There was a 8-year-old kid next to him, which he then realizes and quickly says to the kid not that there is anything weird with riding a pony. A kid replies Joey rode a pony. Joe being another friend of mine in the conversation who had gone horse riding with the kid's family a month prior. My roommate and I had a lengthy conversation while waiting to get seated at a restaurant about how she had gotten hammered drunk and woke up in some guy's bed the next morning not knowing where she was. We spent a good 10 minutes debating whether or not they had sex. Finally look around and noticed two 10-year-old girls had tuned into our conversation and were staring open-mouthed. Very classy moment on our part. Wasn't me, but that first thing that popped in my head is when my ex dropped the F-bomb by little kids at Disneyland, in line to see Rapunzel. My story doesn't involve a kid, but it reminded of it, so frick it. My senior year in high school and I'm a fat neckbeard stoner loser. I'm no longer two of those. In my music appreciation class, which is essentially listening to music and running out the clock on our time in high school. So in my white bread school there is exactly one Asian kid. One day this kid decides to start talking crap to me. He calls me fat and I immediately fall into fat rage and try to say something back. I know, I call him a F. That'll show him. Okay, here we go. Shut up, you chink. Oh. The classroom falls dead silent. I have no idea what possessed me to say other than my brain totally betraying me. The teacher whips around at me. What did you say? I said, shut up, you F. Oh, okay. The fact that the teacher totally accepted this is okay is hilarious to me now. Times have definitely changed. By the way, the entire class went back to what they were doing except for the Asian kid who kept his eyes on me. He may have been giving me a dirty look, but it's hard to tell, 'cause he's Asian. Frick, I did it again. When my daughter was about 3, I was driving her to daycare. Some guy cut me off and I almost swore, but I managed to stow it and just say, F you, fantastic. There was a moment of silence and then my 3-year-old angel pipes up and asks. I was hooking up with this cougar I met at a bar, drunkenly, at her place, and it was dirty, raunchy, cougar sex. After riding her butt for a while, I turned her over so her head was hanging off the bed and started fricking her throat. As I pulled out to finish all over her face and chest while choking her a little, I looked up and made eye contact with her toddler staring at me. Little sucker had been hiding in the closet. Well, I was bragging about getting plastered off wine the night before and puking my guts out that morning. Then I realized that I was in front of a classroom of students. Don't worry, they're autistic so it's a-okay lols. My oh crap moment came when I found out a student's dad put a wire on his kid. Also, when I realized that I'm a soulless fecal smear of a human being. I once said something was freaking short yellow bus retarded at the game stop in the mall. I turn around and right behind me is a mom with her small child who has Down syndrome. I felt like a freaking monster. I was playing a pickup softball game with some friends who all have children. I was at bat, and one of the younger ones, who was on my team, starts heckling me as I swing. I tried to explain that as we were teammates, he was doing the team a disservice by trying to distract me, but the kid had it out for me. So after 2 strikes I told the child quite sternly to stop. When he tried me with it, what are you gonna do about it crap, I calmly replied, I am going to crack you over the head with this baseball bat. His parents didn't like that, not one bit. His parents should be parenting, not getting peeved when other people have to. Sadly this happens more and more nowadays. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.